Well, welcome, Jens and Yashar.
Thanks.
It's an honor to have you on Real Talk. I mean, I've been following your whole journey with Sourceability and starting, back in 2015, and kind of being a little bit of disruptor. And that's why I've been following you, Jens, especially the values of what you're doing with the company. It's also technology Yashar is doing, and I'd like to learn a little bit more. How did you get into this? How did you get into this business, and then come form with the idea, your background, and form the idea of Sourceability?
Yeah, actually, I was working in electronics since '83, so it's pretty long time. And most of the times I was employed, and that's what you do when you're in a company. You try to get the best out of the company. Yeah. So when I left my last company in 2014, I had different options to go back in the industry and work with great companies. But I was like, okay, if you go in a company that's like in the business for 20, 30 years and really to try to change things, it becomes really difficult. So I had some partners, some people with financial background that offered me, hey, we like the idea. The original idea was really being able to mass quote. So in my previous companies, we had 20, 30, 40,000 quotes a week to customers. Yeah, and it took us a week to collect the quotes. Yeah, and whenever we sent it out to the customer, it was obsolete. Yeah. So I said, okay, we should be able to do something like this in real time. This is when the idea started, building Source Engine, a place where the supplier can put in the data, taking care of the data, making sure the offers, the inventory, all that stuff is up to date. And then we just provide the technology and deliver it to the customer. That was the idea of Source Engine. And I started that in 2015. We started developing the technology in 2016. I guess you joined in
early 2016. Yeah.
In 16, and Yashar, we had 10 years before worked together and said like, why didn't you come in, take care of this project? And we went live at Electronica 2018.
Wow.
It took us 2 years. So first we had an outside party developing the technology. We just designed it, and then we sourced it in, and now the whole development is in-house.
Wow. So going from that point, because there was, in the 2010 plus, there's a lot of other companies who tried to make some type of BOM to or bill of materials, as you're saying, is quoting a lot of items for manufacturing. Quick turn, fast, and organizing it. What was your vision to make something different than what was currently out there, products that were out there?
I think the marketplaces, if we talk about marketplaces developed in the last decade, that they really become transactional, mainly in the business to consumer. You're going to Amazon, you're going to eBay, you push a button, you find your product, and you order it, and you get it shipped. We haven't had that in our industry. So the idea really was, can we create a service surrounding electronic components that would provide, okay, I can execute. I see the offer now, I can execute, and I can have the delivery tomorrow, and I don't have to log into 10 different other web pages. And that was the reason. And I think what we learned, so this is the development since we're live, is when we went live in Electronica, we had some of our tier 1 EMS customers coming in. They said, oh, we love it, but Jens, I have 1,500 buyers. I'm not sending them to www.sourceengine.com, but I want to have the data. So can you use like what we call an API? Just to provide us the data and make it transactionable. And this is, I think, where we are in the stage where we say, okay, the marketplace is really the where all the data, the offers, everything comes together, and then the technology is how do I integrate this in the customer systems?
Yeah, I kind of agree more that, just to say, it's kind of a disruptor, but this consumer market is this way. Just like I said, the Amazon change revolutionized the world. The Amazon effect has revolutionized the world of how consumers buy, how they decode or decompress content, how they decide, and the marketing that's behind that. And to our industry of the hardware semiconductor side of manufacturing, it's kind of, as you say, old school. The way we've done it is very analog. The digital wasn't there. We just use Excel sheets and they just manipulate it using codes and macros. But now it's like, how do we have a system that can populate that? And I myself too has been thinking about that for many years. It's like, what's it going to take? Because that's the thing is the person goes in there. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and the vision to be consistency to build it, because there are obstacles. There's a lot of big suppliers out there who don't like this kind of effect because they want to be first.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But and our idea is, at the end of the day, what we see is that our technology, sometimes you're too early when you talk to the customers. We are not ready for this. Yeah. We are not having an API or EDI, but we would like to have still data in our system. So this is where we try to develop the technology so that our suppliers and also customers can sit on top of this. And that's the idea long term, where we can be this provider. So now we're doing integrations with our customers. So they say, look, but I have 1,500 suppliers. My IT department doesn't want to do 1,500 integrations.
Yes.
Can we use Source Engine and sit on it and refer our suppliers onto Source Engine?
Correct. Yeah, to have the integration, which makes it you consolidator. You basically consolidate all of that, and you'll be the medium of communication transfer. So you'll be the medium through API, and digitalization has caused that. So I just want to come to Yashar. So how was that in 2016? Or says Jens says, I have a vision. I want to do this. Basically, figure it out and get to technology. So how was that putting that together, building the foundation?
Yeah, it was. First of all, thank you, for being out here. For the invitation.
Oh, no problem.
And having the opportunity, been following your company's podcast, IBS podcast, for quite a while. A lot of good stuff to learn, so it was really interesting that we have an opportunity to talk. It's been a long journey, right? And I always, try to use LinkedIn, for, putting out, some of my ideas and, how, what we've done and how it's come about. But as Jens said, we've been, working together for quite a while, in the previous venture that we had before Sourceability. And really it was on coming to a point, like a couple of years, within the year, I would say 14 and 15, where there was certain amount of stability in the electronic components industry. And you're kind of like thinking, okay, what is going to be the next step, right? And you're questioning, are we going to continue to be in this distribution? And, how does the let's say, the digital transformation that is affecting almost everything that is going out there in our daily life, when is it going to enter, the electronic component distribution or the supply chain, in general? And then just, having the opportunity, to catch up with Jens as a mentor that has been for the last, 10, 15 years. And saying, Jens, thinking about this, what is the next step? How am I going to grow out of this? And he's like, hey, you know what, actually, that's what I've established a Sourceability for, literally, and I'm like, do you think there's going to be an opportunity for me, to get in there and work with you and, explore those opportunities? And literally that's what had happened. I used to live in Hong Kong then, where we met with Jens and, kind of like, went through all of these sort of like, preliminary topics, right? I'm just going to get the microphone a little bit closer just to make sure, you guys can.
You're good.
So as Jens mentioned, like we are no software developers, or we were not, right? And now, I gladly go around and say, we're in the software business, we're in the technology business after 5-6 years, and then there was a lot of things to learn, as Jens said, we went through the 2 years of development, mostly, with the outside parties. But now we've pulled it all in, here in Irvine, it's where the headquarters of basically the technology for Sourceability is. But I've had the opportunity and the privilege, to lead that. And, there's been a lot of learning, because I come from the industry, from the heart of the industry. In '99, I started in the electronics industry, all the way in the warehouse, and then, university, and coming back into sales and trading and all the rest, right? So, my position in Sourceability has been to try to get the technology, colleagues, who know a lot of good things and, better than us, in software development and et cetera, to get to learn and have an affiliation the way you and I and Jens do with our domain or with our industry, and then, try to convert that and, move that forward, right? And of course, it comes with all the complexities that it is in the B2B business, especially, in the electronic components industry, because of the factories and the manufacturing, the element of the ERP and all the other stuff,
It's a challenge, because there are not so many technology people in our industry. So if you bring people in from outside and you try to explain them our industry, it's sometimes really challenging.
Because there's the landscape. There's many different levels, and it's hard just like you say, what do you do? People ask you, hey, what do you do in the electronics industry? And it's like, what, do you sell cell phones or computers? You know, but when you try to explain it, you lose them quickly because of that. But now I think with the news of the right now supply chain disruption chips, they realize, oh, this is what you do. Yeah. This is the business. So, you know, come to that, but I want to take it back to the technology aspect, because it is a big, taking on some type of big challenge ahead, because if you weren't a coder, engineer, or understand software and taking that role, Yashar, that you did to figure it out, is, as I said, anybody can do it. You just have to be consistent and put out. It's a lot of research and time and thousands of hours you spent, you know, hundreds of thousands of hours you spent of trying to figure out, bringing on the right people, partners, software, and actually building out the map. Because as I say, for myself, from my experience, when we want to build internal infrastructure, and then you want to make that internal infrastructure used for the outside world, it's a big map that can come in. How does this work? All the different innuendos that can come in. How do you make the user experience better? Because at the end of the day, it's UI. These days, it's all built off UI. So what was that context? What was the whole vision of the UI for Source Engine Sourceability itself? What was the vision? Make it ease of like an Amazon type of effect, or how was that?
Yeah, for sure. I think what was really missing, or still is missing, you know, the element of procurement.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of websites, there's a lot of information, you know, not making any references, but there's been a lot of products and SaaS websites out there that is all about sharing information. But the topic of adding, you know, a electronic component to a cart and do a checkout, and it's smoothly like the way we buy shoes or everything else on Amazon, receive it on time with the good customer experience. I think that's really at the heart of what we're trying to develop in SourceEngine.com, right? And that comes, you know, with a lot of extra complexity, because, you know, just, you know, on SourceEngine.com, we have something around 600 million unique electronic components, unique part numbers.
Correct.
Right? You know, that is unprecedented, just to, you know, being able to make that searchable for the user, right? You know, and maintain it 24/7, where the user comes in and puts the part number and make sure that, you know, they're definitely going to get an answer for the query that they're making, right? And then on top of that, you know, the electronic components have a lot of attributes, have technical information, have date code, even, you know, transactional attributes. You know, you got date code, you got MOQs, you got MPQs, you got packaging type, packaging size. You know, there's this ton of information that is simply not normal, you know, for the B2C world. So it's all good and dandy to put on a website and say, you know, we have this part number by, you know, manufacturer. You know, and then click on it and see what you can do with it. And it's a totally different thing that actually there is enough information for that part number, for that SKU, for that item, for the user who's a professional buyer who does this job day in, day out, to add that to the cart and check out.
Yeah. The question I have for that is, for people listening, or people saying in the industry, is like, what makes you different than, as I say, the Mauser or DigiKey, who they have, they're the gorillas, they're the first. What makes it different?
And I think it's really an exciting example. Because if you look just from the shop perspective, people have an excellent user experience when they visit DigiKey or Mauser.
Right.
So, but they have a limited line card, and they are not. If you look at cart sizes, part of the supply chain of the day-to-day production, it's more like smaller cart sizes. Even if they're pushing for getting there, so on Source Engine, you can, at the end of the day, consolidate 2,000, 3,000 manufacturers from either 500 distributors on one click of a button. You put them in the cart, and it gets executed. You get one shipment and one billing. Or you can choose that it will be fulfilled by the supplier. So there is also a change that we're going through. But at the end of the day, a shop concept like Mauser or DigiKey is limited to the manufacturers they have. Yes. And if you run a bill of material and 30% of your bill of material is not on the Mauser or on the DigiKey manufacturer list, then you have to run it somewhere else. Correct. So where do you run it? Then you go to 5 different manufacturers. All of a sudden you run 6-7 bill of materials on 6-7 different websites, and that's where the marketplace is for. And I think this is the huge difference. Our checkouts that we see recently, and of course all this shortage helped us a lot. It's like we're having checkouts with 50, 60, 70 part numbers from 12, 15 different suppliers, with cart sizes of $50,000 and bigger.
Yeah, but that comes back to the question I've asked myself, like, that takes a lot of infrastructure in the back end to process that. Yes. So going from the beginning, first of all, having the partnership with all of these companies to be able to bring them on an API. So how was that pitched to some of those suppliers, say 500 suppliers or to say, hey, can we get your information and put it on? How was that? How did that go? I mean, was there some challenges?
Yeah, it's
definitely.
You always have to in business pitch the value add proposition for both parties, right? And for us, all the names that you mentioned are an important partner.
Correct.
And we are an extension for their existing shop, and we obviously have a persona that we think we target more strategically, and that persona is the professional buyer, right? That's why in SourceEngine.com, especially for the guest user, the experience of the search is based on part number, based on a SKU, right? And we are an extension for 3,000 plus suppliers that we have. We are an extension of their existing shop, whether that shop is online or offline, right? And obviously, what we have tried to do is to have a robust, website where we're visible to the world. That's a very important topic. In different parts of the world, there are different search engines. Obviously, here in the Western Hemisphere, it's mostly Google or, Yahoo or Bing. But, in the other parts of the world, it's Baidu and et cetera. And in order for you to have a good online shop, you have to be visible across all of these different search engines. And for each individual business partner that, we have on Sourceability as a supplier, as a seller, as Jens mentioned, right? We bring that value add proposition that, we're simply an extension. We'll make you more visible all across the world, right? And if there are geographical limitations of where you cannot ship, for various different reasons, the element of sourceability comes because we have 4 warehouses around the world, and we can help also with facilitating bringing the shipments and shipping out, right? So I think, we don't look at any of these business partners, or they don't look at us as a competitor. We've had a very good, and set value add proposition.
That is something that developed.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
In the beginning, it was like,
Yeah.
marketplace. Or you want to put our name there.
Yeah.
So, okay, we might have issues with our
IP, a lot of IP and trademark infringement.
No, I don't even see that. But if you look to the distributors, say, okay, we have an issue with our on the ground salespeople.
Correct.
So, how do we quote? What price do you show? Do you show our name? We don't want to see our name. Yeah. So these are things that develop. Today, it's like, if you look on the marketplace side, we open the marketplace now. So if someone wants to participate in the marketplace and wants to do billing and shipping on their own and just use our technology to transport this info, we are open to that.
So is that basically like a third party?
It's like a third party, yeah. So either at the end of the day, if you compare it with Amazon, you say, okay, fulfill it by Amazon, with Sourceability in this case, or I do it straight with the supplier, which means it brings us more and more, and this is what we try to accomplish, that people use the technology. And it's easy. So I had multiple discussions when I was in Europe. I was fortunate enough to go to Europe in January. I talked to, 20 suppliers, and they said, you know what? It really helps us because there's no investment on their end. It's just how they deliver the data. Yeah. They don't have to spend $100,000, $200,000 in a technology and try to develop a shop. Yeah. So they are really open to it. So we cover this portion of the investment for them, and then we extend the digital footprint.
Yeah, on scaling, that does make sense. Yes, I mean, you brought up a great point for smaller manufacturers of a component that don't have all the capital, the know-how, especially today, because you can't get the talent to build something like that, is you can be the medium of the transfer of the information. Hey, we can be your front end of the shop. You want to do it, just give us your data, and we'll show you, just give us the data live or API or others, and we'll post it on there, and we have the, geographically, we can post it on all the Google, all the websites, and people, and especially, we are in an industry that you guys want to sell your product in. So our search, we have X amount of searches, we have all these suppliers, EMS come to us. So it does make sense for especially the smaller or mid-sized manufacturers to scale. And you guys can help them scale, correct?
Yeah, and we can help them with the integration. Yeah. So if you're a second-tier manufacturer and you try to do an integration in a system on a tier 1 EMS, good luck with that.
Correct.
You don't have the attention, and that's why they are really interested in working with us and say, hey, we want you to provide the data highway, and we know your technology, and then the quoting is similar, the way how we can process orders. All that stuff becomes unique, and that's how we look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely fascinating. I mean, look at some of what has changed, and I was just saying, you got Sourceability itself is a little bit of a disruptor, showing what can happen, because a lot of the the leaders and people in the industry look at, oh, is this as you say, a trading company? Where's the traceability of components? How does it work through? But at the end of the day, you are a single pass through, just like Amazon, the consumer side. How do you know the traceability of the product that go to Amazon? You don't know what you're getting, if it's right part or it's counterfeit, these type of things. Yeah. And that's how do you handle that part? Because that is a very important part for the supply chain, is the traceability. So how do you handle that with a communication point?
So I can answer it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have different levels of suppliers that we show. Either we have a manufacturer direct supply.
Correct.
So the customer knows we get the product straight from the manufacturer. Or we have it from a franchise distributor, which gives him security. Okay, there is a traceability back to the manufacturer through a franchise distributor. What we also have, and that became more and more important I would say, especially in the last 6 months with the shortage, is what we call qualified third party. Okay. These are suppliers that we vet through our system like we always did. So we
compliance. You give them a compliance.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
But on the other hand, we do then the quality control for them, which means it comes in one of our warehouses. We have huge labs in there. We have X-ray machines, decapping, sourceability testing. So all that is in-house, where we then what we call a level 3 inspection. So this is what gives the customer the security that the product, even if it might not be traceable, is still a good quality and has a reliable source.
Sure. Yeah. I agree, because especially we're in an anomaly of a market time right now in the state, but it is because people are trying to find it and turn every stone over to find the component, and they don't know. They can go to any website, they don't know if it's a real website or not, but they can come to a trusted supplier who has all the compliances in place, and to be able to do the testing, just to make sure, like, hey, I found the supplier, for example, in Asia. They're going to transfer money, and they don't even know what they're going to get, and you can be that, as I said, if it's on your site, you can be that intermediary, say, we can qualify this, we know what it is, and we can supply it to you with all the certs or all the certifications that this is authentic. And
that's, by the way, how we started as a Sourceability. If you just take Sourceability without the digital transformation that we developed internally, we were a trusted source for tier 1 and tier 2 OEMs and EMS companies who said, okay, I don't want to buy in Asia with a supplier, but I buy from you and you do all the work and the quality assurance. And that's how we started. And I think it's important, if I look what happened in especially in the last 6 months, also to our organization. We are 330 people now globally, I guess in 17 offices. I'm not even really sure about that. But we forecasted, just to give you an idea, for 2021 around about 200 million in budgeted in revenue. That was our budget. And in April, it's the first time we did more than 32 million in revenue. So and our book-to-bill rate since March, also driven through our digital presence, our book-to-bill rate is still at 1.5.
Wow.
Yeah, which also concerns me, because it really brings our organization on the logistics side, on the QC side, on my finance department,
capacity, everything's at the seams, busting at the seams.
Everyone is really stressed out, which I think is a good thing. And whenever that slows down, everyone says, "Okay, I wish this time's back." But for an organization like ours, who on one hand develops technology, tries to do things different, implement it into your existing account base, and then your business goes increases like this. That these are the challenges, and this is what we're facing.
As you say, more money, more problems. These are things. Expansion. There are. I mean, we're facing the same thing in the supplying our customers. It's the same. We're facing the same challenge. Of course, business as well. I think the whole industry in general is doing very well during this time. Of course, in the supply chain side of filling that gap. Right now, as I say, the distributors are filling gap. But a lot of the main distributors they can't fill the gap because they don't have stock and inventory. And the inventory is regional based too, especially because people don't realize, like, you have US inventory, you have Asia inventory, you have Europe inventory, you have Southeast Asia inventory, you have China. Like, everything is changed. And
it exposes, by the way, some of the issues that we're having now, because the APIs we get are not as accurate as we think, because there's something sold on a different website, and it's not updated in the API. So we take orders on Source Engine, and then we find out, okay, the supplier already sold somewhere else. So I think it's a good thing for us because it pushes us, which is always it's better if the market pushes you than the boss pushes you. But these are the things that help us also now on getting the attention, and then people really talk to us and say, hey, I've never been able to upload a bill of material with 1,000 line items and get a quote in 15 seconds. Yeah. And that's what it at the end of the day is about, that I have an immediate access to information, pricing, inventory, date codes, what is in the market, and I don't have to send 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 emails and have to wait
different
an
Excel
hour or
sheets.
days. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that again, you bring that point, is the customer experience. At the end of the day, it's a buyer experience, customer experience. It's their journey of how they get the information as quickest, because everybody's on a time frame and a timeline. And I agree, the consumer industry has pushed that now to the business side, to the B2B. Yep. And in supply chain, we are being pushed to the max to be able to get that experience out to them. Of course, being a qualified source, being given, and them to be able to articulate their cost of materials. They have the BOM, they have a build, they have to do it right away. How do I get that cost? Of course, there was a lot of other mediums out in the industry that have these type of tools, but it's formulating how many sources do they have. They might be just one source or a couple sources, but having hundreds at one gives you a little more advantage to help, and again, find a solution for the customer.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And most importantly, right, you're right. There are a lot of tools. There are a lot of BOM tools. Yeah. There are a lot of coding tools. There are a lot of e-commerce websites. There's a lot of websites, but in the end of the day, what is really important for that customer, for that user, is that, am I able to transact? Am I able to solve my problem, right? So, during the shortages, the problem is, finding components.
Correct.
Right. During the non-shortage time, which in the last 5-6 years has been less often, it's incredible, and I think the volatility, based on geopolitics or climate change and all that, it just has increased the opportunity of more volatility in the electronic component supply chain. But even during the non-volatile time, the problem that the user or the buyer, the professional buyer, especially that we are focused on, is trying to resolve is to get product at better price, and it's trying to get it with a shorter lead time, because they don't want to necessarily buy product and put it in their warehouse and pay for it there and then use it 6, 9, 12 months down the road, right? So focusing on these problems and solving these problems is Source Engine's, most, let's say, a prominent position, and again, I go back to marketplace, the transactionability. It's a totally different ball game when it comes up to buying electronic components. And we that's why we partner up. We for us, having partners is very important. We partner up with aggregator websites like Octopart. Our availabilities are there. Especially for Sourceability's franchise lines. And we partner up with existing flagship shops like DigiKey and Arrows and Avnets and many other in Europe and Asia. And as Jens mentioned, I think it's really important that the professional buyer is not just buying one electronic component, right? They're buying a list of electronic components, and you need tools for that, right? And building those tools to work in cloud infrastructure in order to be able to return a result for over 550 million, 600 million SKUs, right? Those are, again, the smooth experience that we try to deliver on Source Engine, right? And most importantly, we think that we have lowered the barrier of entry for our business partners. Right. That's really important to be talked about here. Whether if it's yourselves at IBS or many other business partners, as a supplier, as a customer, they can come and participate and own a piece of that in Source Engine, either as a supplier, as a customer, as both. So that's really important also, mention.
Yeah, it's like a full turnkey. There is no, there's no judgmental. It's an open market. Everybody's there to win together. We're working as a partnership to work to instead of, as the traditional changing, the digitalization of electronic supply chain has completely transformed. And we're just in the infancy of it, right? Yeah. And I can see Source, that's why I wanted to come back and understand, like, there are 2 or 3 entities under the Sourceability brand. So how does that work?
So there are, at the end of the day, there's 7 different legal entities. Okay. But there are also different products and trends. And how we organize it is, we have, since we are transactional, we have to be present in Asia with legal entities, if it's in Hong Kong or in Singapore, in India. We are in Mexico, in the US, in Germany. So, but we have also the brands. So the brands, at the end of the day, this is how we mark our products. And one of them is Source Engine, and there are more in the pipeline, and there are others out there, like for example, Quoted. Quoted is a brand, is a tool, but it's embedded in Source Engine, which allows you really to start RFQ management, either on a corporate level, or on an individual RFQ level. So what the idea is really to have these brands underneath the Sourceability, which is the legal entity, which also caused in the beginning some conflict of interest, because some of our suppliers always thought that Sourceability might be a competitor. They have not seen it as an opportunity. They have seen it more as a challenge and a threat. So, but that is what the last years developed, that most of them understand, okay, the Sourceability, if I look at my vision in 5 years, Sourceability is just doing the transaction if the suppliers are not able to do it for whatever reasons, because they have no warehouse, they have no QC, and the customer demands that.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. So you also have, I think there's a Circle or Burn-In as well.
Yes.
How do those operate?
Yeah, so Circle is like a platform where we offer engineers, if they have challenges and they don't have the resources, to find them through the Burn-In. Where we, at the end of the day, is kind of a matchmaking, which we are putting more in the background, because we have all the relationships. We have the relationships with the design houses, with the EMS companies. We can do pilots. The Burn-In itself was started as a platform for creating content.
Okay.
So whatever is interesting content in our industry, either from an engineer or from a company, that can be shared. Yeah. And long term, if I look back, this is what a marketplace should be like. It should be providing information, data. We're talking a lot about data. And then also giving the opportunity to exchange your ideas and minds with other people in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it completely makes sense. I mean, there are solutions or diversifying in different platforms, because of course engineering is big in our industry.
Yes. Having
engineering or having some franchise lines that you can work with the manufacturer directly to design into projects. So how much of that business do you currently do because right now shortage is kind of crazy, but people still asking for it because they want alternatives. Yeah. They want to find a solution for this 50 week lead time. So how does Sourceability itself go about basically having a solution for that?
These are a few things, and maybe if you don't mind, if you want to cross-reference, you can find that on Source Engine. Okay. Simply tells you this product and this manufacturer crosses with this product from this manufacturer. This is one functionality that's on the marketplace. If we go to the engineers, and this is something that we, through our experience also with Circle, is that the old FAE support that we also provide to our customers. So if you need designing support, we provide that. We have engineers in India, where we have a bigger team, and then we have people in the regions like in Europe, in the US, and in Asia. But if you talk to the engineers, I would say 80 to 90% is done either in groups on the internet. So the research picking up the phone and saying, hey, distributor, I want to talk to the manufacturer. I'm thinking about designing in this manufacturer. This is already quite obsolete, because if someone needs information, I still would say it starts probably with Google. You Google the challenge, and then you end up in different chat rooms, forums, where you exchange and you collect information. And that is also a development that we realized. If you look, we talk about Circle, that how we thought Circle develops, and then it did not, is that people are really highly self-motivated to find a solution. And the internet, I guess, in that case, is the number one go-to address. Yeah,
the internet myself, the Google is the most data on the world. I mean, as I say, has the most data in the world.
That's true. But we have, obviously nobody ever, starts an adventure, whether if it's a software development, especially I call it the rabbit hole, versus any other, product development, and, does not fail, throughout what we have learned, based on, what hasn't worked, as Jens mentioned, and, what has worked. we are actually going to be going live, in the next a couple of weeks with a new offering, with a new product in Source Engine, which I kind of like, leave that to our marketing, to announce it, not necessarily here. But the narrative, with the engineers is what your question was. Imagine engineers, in their own environment, which is most of the time in a PCB software design tool. They're sitting and they're looking at, only technical information and design electronic components that are board. Totally oblivious to the fact that, is this component even available?
Correct.
Right? It could be, you and I know very well, the life cycle doesn't determine if the product is available or not, right? Especially in a shortage period like this, you can have, a life cycle active, and the product might have been introduced, 6 months ago, right? But it's still, there's absolutely nothing available, right? So the idea that we pursue in Source Engine, we're going to go live with it sometime very soon, on a product level, because we are already live on an API level. And again, I'm going to leave, those announcements to our marketing to come up with, is to help the engineer to have an awareness, again, to the transactability of the components that they're designing onto their board, right? And we are already, are very active in that sphere, because through Source Engine, not only, but also through Sourceability, we are exposed to billions and billions of dollars of inquiries that are coming to us through RFQs or bill of materials. And of course, hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions that we're doing, and everything is in our cloud infrastructure on the data in a very secure basis, and we're trying to basically create these attributes in terms of transactionability. Again, for me, the biggest missing component today in the electronic component supply chain, whether if it's for the professional buyer or the engineer, is that transactionability, adding to the cart and checking out. So we're trying to now prepare and present those for the engineer persona, so they're able to make a more conscious decisions, not just based on technical information, but also based on, market intelligence. Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of market intelligence tools out there, the IHS or all the ones that have
correct,
this.
yes.
But you're giving the experience that they don't have to go to multiple different sites, especially for the engineer. I agree with you. Engineers, they have their own library. Right. They don't, and they're just in their own bubble. Yeah. They don't know what's going on outside with supply chain stuff. They create a gadget, and they're like, this gadget, here it is. Here's all the components I need, and realize that what's the life cycle of some of these components? Are they available?
Yeah, and again,
but for them, not only going to a website or buying the data, I think it's important. They would like to have that in their environment. So inside the EDA tool. So that I do not have to leave my application that I'm used to, that I work with 8 hours a day, where I design, that I have to go outside this application to absorb all this data. So this is the next step, where we will announce partnerships, new products, that will be available for the developer, for the designer, inside the environment.
Yeah, as much as that for the buyer, the ERP is important.
Correct.
Because that's their world. That's where, they receive everything that they have bought, and, everything goes into the scheduling, the production. For the engineer, that important tool, is their EDA or PLM tools. And again, having robust APIs, to offer, and the correct information becomes, very, very important.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because even with ourselves, with our FAEs and designing with engineers, the always thing we run into is like, they're designing a product, single sourced, of course, of usual the time. And and then they got this item. They don't have the information. And the engineer, of course, they search themselves. They go into their own forums. They get the information. I want to put this together. And they figure out this gadget that's state of the art, but they didn't really realize that what they're doing, they're working against themselves.
But this is, it's important. The engineer always tries to get the best product. So the engineer is not responsible for the supply chain.
Yeah.
And when I was in Europe in January, I was visiting one of the car manufacturers, also because they saw shortages coming up, but we were talking about something else. Most of these car manufacturers are kind of buying or assembling black boxes. They buy systems from Bosch, from Continental, from Vallejo, whatever. So, and they are not involved in the design or in the product life cycle when their sub-supplier or their supplier develops these products. So usually I only can talk about the German car manufacturers because I have a background
Most experience there.
But it takes them 2 to 3 years to develop a new product. The product is live for 10 years. And depending then on the brand, it has to be serviced between 10 and 25 years. So the life cycle is on 38 years, 40 years.
Correct.
So if on the design inside, now even if you have the best product, but you're not getting the supply for the next 30 years or 40 years, this is creating issues. And this is where car manufacturers are really interested in the data that we provide and say, hey, if you can if we can use the system that the moment the engineer thinking about designing in a product, and we see, oh, this product might become on the bomb list of the car manufacturer, they say, oh, veto. We have concerns. It's a single source, or it's for whatever reasons. Or we had Automotive was pretty hit also by the bans that was imposed from the U.S. government, the tariffs.
Bans and tariffs.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something where the information, where someone needs the information at one point. And this is where I think with sourceability, if we're talking about the digitalization from really design to manufacturing or even after service, this is where we can make a difference by providing this data through an API. Yeah.
Well, I agree, because it makes, of course, everybody wants lean. The problem with supply chain digitalization is making it a leaner information, so there's not so many intermediaries getting between it. Right. And as you know, when it was analog-based, a lot of information can change when it skips 1, 2, 3, 4 people between it. If you can go directly to the source and have them, as I said, being a tool, just information tool. You actually don't have the data. The data is coming from the manufacturer. It's coming from the distributor. It's coming from the engineer house or wherever it's coming from. And you're just the medium of giving that information. It's basically real time. That's the number one thing, is real time, because when you go through 1, 2, 3, or 4 steps, that doesn't become real time anymore.
But 80% of our industry right now, so I'm talking to manufacturers in Japan, for example. They are not real time. They change their price once a quarter. They still provide that with a PDF. So so there are some manufacturers that are ahead of this, and I think in our industry, if I take an example that really changed also that and supported a little bit our business model, is like Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments said, okay, we are putting a lean approach on our distribution model. We're going more direct. And we're trying to get more and more on the digital side, and we have like global pricing. So these are things that make it much easier than really to digitalize your whole business model. And I think that helps a lot. And it helps us a lot just to talk to the customers and suppliers. Say, hey, what do you expect in 3 years? Do you expect in 3 years distribution or manufacturer acting the same way like they do today? And nobody says yes. Nobody answers this question with yes. Everyone knows there's big change coming.
Oh, the unknown is there, and that's why through this pandemic. So let's go back to that theme for the So from from March of 2020, what did you see on the ground? I mean, you guys have a big team. What did you see change, and what did you see the demand change for? Because it went into from electronics shutdown, then it went for PPE, went into that part, and then all of a sudden, June, things completely turned around.
Yeah, well, the traffic on SourceEngine.com definitely took a hike, right? And it started to grow.
And it started in January.
That's true.
It started in January. You saw it in January.
And the number one manufacturer that was demanded was 3M.
3M.
And it was masks.
The PPE.
From our industry in January, and I remember I went on a world tour to push up our digital transformation, to push that in our offices. I left, I guess, beginning of February. I was 4 weeks traveling. So I was in Asia, and people would bring masks from the US to Asia. That was the situation in February. And we saw that in January, I guess. We were one of the top customers or transaction on really for 3M. And they ran out of stock, I guess, with their 1860 mask. I guess that was the most famous mask in February. They said there's no inventory, and then it went crazy. So we saw that in January, and this is where digital really gives you an edge.
The data.
We have never sold PPE. So that's not our core business, but being a 3M
distributor
and reselling 3M products, people would take the digital approach, and we had it on Source Engine, and we were like, man. So, and that's how it started.
Of course, this was for businesses, right? Not for individuals.
Of course, the manufacturers. I mean, your customers.
Our customers.
Everybody needed PPE.
Right.
All our customers in supply chain. Everybody needed PPE.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean the consumer base buying one or two is different.
And they needed gloves.
Yeah, the gloves.
They needed disinfectant.
And we could sell to our logistics partners too. Like not want to mention names. But the
everybody
customer base all of a sudden grew, but still maintained the B2B nature.
Right.
And it was.
We ended up with companies like Uber.
Oh, really? Wow.
Uber saying, okay, we see you have 3M products. So you saw that this is where the digital...
The presence.
That's important.
Yeah.
So, and then it developed, and maybe Yashar can... It really got nuts,
I mean, obviously, the 2020 was a strange year, but definitely, I would say it multiplied, the acceleration of internet adoption among our persona of users and customers, whether if it's in the OEM, EMS, ODM, or anybody else that remotely, companies like Sourceability or yourselves cater for in terms of selling MRO products or electronic components. Which obviously, we categorize the PPE under MRO, adopting, sourceengine.com and going to this website, massively accelerated. And then there was a hike for the demand on the API. Today, we have thousands of, companies that they're signing up, on sourceengine.com, for our APIs. And in a lot of cases, they still, are working with it either within their ERP systems or, otherwise. But then, as the we started to get out of the woods because of the vaccinations, with the circumstance of the 2020 with the corona, now guess what? The same customers that obviously have gotten used to using internet and API, so the shortages are there for the electronic components, and now they are more, open for transacting on SourceEngine.com or on any website, and we have seen a tremendous, growth. On credit card checkouts, for very, very large dollar values, where I even, thought that, there would be a limit on, what people are going to put on their credit card, company credit card to buy electronic components. But, so it completely, became a different perspective, I would say.
Well, let me give you little things. Visibility creates likeness at scale.
Right.
And with digital transformation, when you're visible out there, you create likeness, which creates credibility and then creates opportunity that people do. And that's, I can see what was Sourceability, what you guys did in last year. But a lot of companies, they really transformed, but you guys were there. You were visible. So you got a credibility and you got the opportunity to be able to serve them. Like, okay, now the business model changed. So it went from PPE now to massive semiconductors. So you're seeing more opportunity because you were a credible source during a challenge. Like, you help somebody out, they're going to give you some more business, and that's just general business practice.
What I also think what helped work from home is that people had maybe more time to do their own experimentation and to create their job from home. So and adjust to that, and this is where then the demand came in. And it's interesting because we talked about it. If you're really a medium size, a second year, third year OEM or EMS company, usually I would say, and that's how it worked in the last 30 years, you can be covered by the top 2 or top 3 franchise distributors. That's how they got there because they had the service, they had a good customer experience. So, but now it's about how to interface. So people do not. It's easy to go on a website without getting a call. So if you send an RFQ to a distributor, they're gonna call you. They quote you. They say, "Hey, is my quote good enough?" Now you send it to 5 people. You have to tell 4 people no, and one gets the order. That's easier, and I think this is what we saw. And then with all of a sudden the sign-ups, if you just look at the sign-ups, we have numbers of sign-ups that we never could reach with our own on-ground people, with our account managers. And it's going like this. And you see, okay, people are cruising around. You have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a week that are visiting without signing up, and then a week later you say, okay, the sign-ups went up like this. So people try stuff, and I think that's also the beauty of the digital environment. You can try stuff without getting pushed to really use it. If you like it, you use it. If you don't like it, you walk away.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's 2 points to that. First of all, you're collecting data, which is very powerful to make to calculate decisions, but also you understand the journey of what people are looking for because you can see the back end and people said that data that you're collecting, you know how to curate or make the site experience better. Okay, people are just going to this site or people going to this page. Why? You know, then you can see everybody because there's something on there that they like to use. So you can curate that journey to make it a 1, 2, 3 click journey that gives that experience.
And we have really funny stories. We have a computer manufacturer, global computer manufacturer, who doesn't produce, but they have a contract manufacturer. So we went into the shortages, and the guy said, "Hey, I created cards. Can I share this card with my contract manufacturer?" And we said, "Yeah, sure. That's a functionality. So how can I do that? And then if I share the card, which is for them because it was pricing went up, so it was outside the pricing. I share the card. Can my contract manufacturers just execute the card, and which means it's like a price approval for the increase. Say, yeah, you can do that." And they said, "That's amazing. I've never been able because if I find parts, then I have to call, I have to send an email, whatever. If they go back, they then have to develop cards on different websites." They said, "No, you just." So since then, what the guy did, he's only using this function. He's putting cards together
and sending
send them to the different. He started with one of his contract manufacturers. He's sending it to 2 or 3, and they execute. So now they have to sign up. You know, companies they've never heard about Source Engine. So they sign up and they share it. And this is something what I think the pandemic really it helped our business as much as it hurt hurt most of the world. In our industry, that really helped us and kicked us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a turning point, you know, in the digitalization, right? You know, and it's almost like all those industries that, you know, somehow they were managing to navigate without, you know, beginning to digitalize, you know, during the COVID, you know, they just, you know, it just went out of hand. You know, I would say there is no turning back from me here, you know, and then, you know, it's the complexities, of course, of our industry, you know, I would say, you know, continues to make it slow and make it difficult and make it challenging, and you know, and you know, hopefully, you know, in Source Engine we have created this environment, you know, where again, you know, that they get a barrier of entry for the business partners, whether customers or sellers, are low enough, you know, and then you know we continue to work with them and you know take their input into place. We're continuously developing, right? You know, we're our engineering team, you know, releases every day code, you know, we release every day, you know, every day, sourceengine.com, you know, it gets improved and it gets better, you know, and you'll be surprised if you look at the ERP world, you know, where we're just, you know, adopting a new ERP system by the end of this year in Sourceability. And I know that, you know, or if you work with the EDA and PLM companies, they do code release once a year, you know, or twice a year, right? You know, and then that's the difference. That's the difference between that old enterprise world and the new, you know, cloud-based software world where, you know, you're doing releases every day and things are changing every day because you work in Agile, you're working with your business partners and your analytics and making improvements all the time.
But I think it's also important, as much as we talk about what we might have, I don't even want to say accomplished, but what we developed in the last 4 years, we are a young company. Yeah. So we turned 6 on July 15th, which tells us or tells me, I'm doing this since 83, there's much more ahead of us than what we just did in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think the timing, even the timing, sometimes when you're an early bird, that is also a kind of a handicap because people really don't trust the first mover, you know.
Don't trust the disruptor. They don't trust it. What are they out for?
I hate that word disrupting because I simply think this comes from an industry that we know very well, and I think this helps by developing products like this, where there is a demand for certain services. But if a first mover, people always think, okay, is it something legitimate or not? I remember I had meetings at Electronica when we started, and people said, oh, Jens has this idea. He's out of business in 2 years. Yeah,
it's not going to
work. So at least we made it now 6 years, and we're seeing the first results. It's also much easier now today since we have a product, or we have many products. Yeah, that's different than selling a PowerPoint. You know.
Well, you have a consistent stream of revenues coming. You've
Yeah.
built. I mean, as I said, I got the achievement which you got to go from 0 to over 200 million in 6 years, especially in this industry of supply chain, is very tough because there's a lot of barriers to get through. There's a lot of hoops to jump through because companies don't want to add. How do you become approved as a supplier? How do you prove the AVLs? These are things that is a lot of challenges. There's a lot of roadblocks. And I can say that it is, and people sometimes turn away. Oh, is this credible? Is this real?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys.
This is your daily motivation to show it's credible.
Correct.
And of course, some of the if you develop product, I think that's the number one experience that I did in the last 6 years over all other experiences that I had in my whole life. A failure in software is really part of the business and making you better. You develop 10, 15, 20 features and then you use 5. Yeah. But you have to make sure that you turn around quick. That's what Yashar just mentioned. So a failure in a sales environment that I was always my whole life in sales is not really motivating, you know. But in the software environment, this is encouraging, and I think this is how you really get much better. And that's my number one experience in the last 2 years since we are live, that when a product is live, it constantly changes. Yeah, and a really good example is in the beginning we said, okay, we have to have a login. If someone wants to see that all that stuff, that magic stuff, you have to have a login. And that was the worst decision. Yeah. We should have had it open from day one. Yep. Yeah. But this is kind of when you're not confident that your technology becomes good enough. Huh?
Well, there's always that thing that you want to also, I want to make sure I know who's coming in, what's going out. Yes. But at the end of the day, it's the world we're living in, everything is open, right?
It's exactly the other way around.
Platform. It's the other way around because there's platforms that are built, developers built off those platforms, and everything is open coded. Yeah. So it's not like you can't hide anything.
Yeah. That's right. This is where you're in the industry specific part of the brain says, hey, you have to protect this. Today it's totally different. Today people still sign up because they want to have credit lines, the payment terms and that.
We'll get notifications and things like this.
Customized experience, right? But as Jens mentioned, it's all about it's the focus. What we learned is that the focus has to be in the customer experience or the business partner experience, rather than what we're going to protect. So that is exactly that. That's why we are very open, on working with business partners of any sort. We work with. With CalcuCode, for instance, which is a very successful RFQ management tool, right? We work with Octopart, we work with many other, distributors. Whether we work with ERP providers. We as I mentioned, we are adopting a new ERP that we're implementing. And there's a lot of good things that we're going to be doing, with this company. It's Oracle. There's a lot of opportunities that we're able to entertain with them, especially with our customers that they're also using Oracle, for instance, as an ERP system, right? So, it's completely the other way around. The digital transformation, the software world, the technology, it's all about the transparency. It's all about, the cloud infrastructure. It's all about the business partner, the customer experience. And the moment that you're trying to go the other way around, you're swimming across this stream, and it's just not going to happen.
So I have a question for you guys, for personally too, as the people know. How is your system? Because you created this platform intermediary for all the supply chain BOM tools. How does that work? Is there a customized CRM system built into it? Or how does that work? And it communicates with a different ERP system for transaction? Yeah. Because everybody today is trying to figure out of course, we can't, it's hard to have one solution. How have you built that out? I mean, that's something that I am dealing with, because I think a lot of people out there is like, what is the philosophy behind that? What do you think is working and what's not working?
So, there's, I have a lot of hindsight moments, right? In hindsight, I would have done it, this and that. I recently, put an article on LinkedIn, that I, talked about exactly that. There's definitely the component of a CMS, a contact management system. There is a CRM, because you have to be able to reach out, to your users and let them know, what is out there, what you've just deployed, what is new feature, what is a new capability, you have. Let's not forget the biggest thing in our industry is the catalog. Yeah. You first you have to build a catalog if you're a marketplace. And you want to make sure that, for every single part number that people are going to search, you have an answer for. You have to have a catalog. We had to build a whole catalog. There was no off-the-shelf, piece of software that I could find that, would locate, over 600 million, part numbers and SKUs on top of it, and we'll have, 15, 20 attributes, per. So we ended up developing all of these, components, all of these, modules, let's say, from scratch. Sure. But, what we did was that every time we realized that there is something out of the shelf that we could, tune into, like, for example, an ERP, that we're not developing our own ERP. Yeah. You can develop on your own ERP, but, again, a rabbit hole, right? Yeah. There are off-the-shelf, nature, what we have in Source Engine for sure, but, the core of what allows to be able to sell electronic components, with all that complexity, it's all, done from scratch, is all built from scratch. And it's needless to say, everything's in the cloud infrastructure, available 24/7.
But the way you deliver, and we have a pilot running right now with some of our OEM customers. Okay. So the OEM customers said, okay, mainly this and SAP customers. So they're using SAP, so they're creating the bill of materials, and they say, okay, we quote. We need quotes either once a month, once a quarter, once a year. So what we did, we developed a customized catalog, which is easy for them. They say, okay, what is the manufacturers, what are the distributors that we have, and we allow them. The system is in the cloud to use the system and send it out electronically to the suppliers, and then they can choose which offer I want and all the functionality behind. But
most importantly, it's part of the shop. Right, so that's the key, because then you end up building another software and another piece, and now the user again is okay. So now I got all my quotes. What am I going to do with them? Right. So again, we strive to build everything in the context of the e-commerce shop. Right. So if, for example, the customer is now getting their own tailor-made quotes from IBS, from Avnet, from Sourceability, etc., they have an opportunity to purchase, right? Because that's the really important part, because we know very well receiving electronic components from multiple different suppliers, into your ERP systems, right? And getting them on time and scheduling them, again, times will go back from the shortage times. Customer are going to want to reschedule,
Yeah, I have a question.
But
how, go ahead.
I think I just want to, I think the question is also, how do we deliver it? So how can they integrate it in a SAP environment and an EDI, and there's still a lot of customization there. So there is not yet a tool. So if we find this tool and we're working on this gives you another edge. But what the upside, and that's what the experience is with the customers. So they say, okay, we can manage now 20 of our suppliers through that interface. So at the end of the day, and that's our experience with these their IT departments or ERP departments is, okay, at least I have only one integration that I have to customize. It might take me 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and on how we have to deliver the data, how we make it transactionable, EDI, like an order API, or and that's what it is. I think that it probably takes another 12 to 24 months to really do big steps in this area that you just have a plug in. But at a certain point, you have to start and you collect all the experience from what's different between how we deliver to Oracle, to Infor, to SAP, and then how they can process it back to their suppliers.
How this is, as a commodity, listening in a commodity manager seat or price or sourcing to how, because we all know that the pricing is a challenge, because you can get standard pricing. How are you guys managing that outside? Let's say market is stable, because right now it's out of, but a stable market with pricing issues, because a lot of contract pricing comes into play. A lot of those challenges come to play because how do you guys mitigate that?
So that's what Jens was talking about. We have built, and that's a key difference between a B2B e-commerce marketplace or an e-commerce in general and a B2C, right? You have to provide tools for that user, for that customer to be able to get exactly what they want, not necessarily the internet pricing, right? The moment that it goes into, well, I want my own pricing because I happen to be an OEM, here in Southern California, and I'm focused at, for example, aerospace. We have a lot of big aerospace industry out here, right? And then I want my own pricing, let's say, for example, for my microcontrollers manufactured by, X, Y, or Z, right? we ended up, the experience for us was that, we had to build a smooth request for a quote tool in the context of our shop, right? And throughout the sourceengine.com, whether you're looking for one part number or you're looking for a list of part numbers, there is an opportunity to make a request for a quote. And what happens is that, you can tell us which supplier, or, we take that, as a consultant and look for an array of suppliers, and we come back and we quote you. And when we quote you back, that's a custom quote for you only, right? And that's in a format of a saved card, and it's available for the next 8 hours, for you to check out, because if you don't, then that, a card is going to expire, right? To be able to customize all of this, the code is only available on the internet only for that customer, and then making sure that, we're working the requirement, around the clock, and, we're able to work it for more than one part number for a list of MPNs and all. That's where all of those complexities come in. That's why Source Engine has, multiple different tools, whether if it's an enterprise RFQ tool, as Jens was talking about, or just an RFQ tool in general, and embedded into the BOM, coding and all the rest, is an inherent part of the e-commerce experience.
In that pilots that we have with three or five distributors that we actively approach, it's like, okay, they know who the customer is. We make it so, and they have a customer API, customized pricing.
Yeah.
So, and what happens is, inside the RFQ tool, then the customer gets 5 prices from 5 different distributors, and he can make a decision who is awarding the order to. And then this is that's not going obsolete. Obviously, he then can schedule shipments and can schedule. I guess in Source Engine we can schedule up to 12.
That's right.
12 months. And,
That's right.
And push out even up to 18 months.
No, it's extremely fascinating. As I said, it can get very complex. It's a simple format, the layers that are go through this. Because one thing it is there's module-based and having intermediate of technology talking to each other. And that's why I wanted to move on to the technology side of cloud-based systems, like how especially the pandemic has pushed us to everything connectivity. What do you guys see? I mean, you're in this tech space. What do you see as technology your customers are asking for? What are the new technologies or the engineering you see that's changing? It's revolutionizing the way we do business and transact, or technologies that are consumer or industrial that's really going to change for the future?
I think, I'd answer that question, focus, in the supply chain, right? Of course, cloud is already a cliche because everybody knows everything is in the cloud infrastructure. But I think for our industry, the APIs are going to be, a game changer, and we're probably looking at, I foresee in the next 5 to 7 years, a lot of customers are, getting their, price and availabilities, from their multiple different suppliers, into their own ERP systems, or at least some sort of a conduit system, right? We got to understand, API in our industry has different implications because, again, customers are running. I'll give you an example. We have EMS customers, here in California, that they're running queries on their bill of materials up to 40,000 line item a day.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we got regular business, from these companies by placing back the order on an order API, right? So you have the offer API, and your offer API has to be able to handle that volume of traffic, right? And obviously, the offers, in our industry change. So they have to be able to come back in a timely manner and place the orders. And again, you can't handle that. So I think, the complexity and robust, APIs are going to be very, very interesting. And as we all know, APIs are open source, protocols, right? So it's really not about monetizing that again. It's again, being able to offer a seamless and good experience to that customer. And then obviously, what you want to be able to do, you want to be able to have this customer to, in Source Engine, we have 3,000 plus suppliers. I can't remember off the top of my head how many suppliers we have on live API. So when this customer is querying its 40,000 line item BOM on a daily basis, I would like that query to hit the supplier's API. So I want to be that facilitator. So if that supplier sits in Asia and has an API, that the OEM sitting here, it's querying that on the fly and placing the order. So I think those dynamics, I would say in the next 3, 5, 7 years, again, is going to be a game changer. And again, okay, I have it, I queried it, I want to be able to buy it, I bought it, now I want to be able to make sure that I can track it, that I'm going to receive it, it's going to be delivered on time. And all of those things being handled seamlessly, especially on an API level, I think is going to be a fundamental.
At a certain point in certain industries,
Yeah.
this will be also then the physical product will be connected to kind of blockchain traceability tools. Yeah, we're working with 2 companies to say, hey, there's also a digital twin, or there is a document that's confirming that this lot code with this COO was shipped to you, which is important also if we look further. We have a lot of customers that have volatile production, so sometimes they create access. Really, to make access valuable for them is to create kind of a traceability. If you're not having the traceability, so I think we are working with 4 manufacturers right now that we say, okay, we can really put the physical product with a digital document, and so these are things that will really change our industry, because this is then the first time that something is 100% traceable. You always have a document that is connected to the product, which is and we have these issues in our industry. I don't know, maybe since 20 years, I guess 20 years, 22 years or 24 years. I heard the first time that the product was counterfeit or whatever. So that's a threat. Yeah. That's a threat to a lot of industries in that are related to electronic components. So I see a lot of things beyond just the transaction and the data that will change in our industry. And if we are also export restrictions that we have, if you look into it's
there are export, there's ITARs, a lot of products, they're all that come into play.
All that stuff. So and if you, at a certain point, then connect really the physical product with a document. So these are things that we're working in the background, and it might take another 12, 18 months till we have first results. But it's very interesting, because one thing is for sure, it's going to come.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more, Jens. I think that we brought up the thing of technology, of blockchain, and for traceability. Because right now, I mean, they're working, I know a lot of companies work with foods, the food traceability, of course. That's a big thing, foods. And now components, because it lies there. Because, you know, in this era, a lot of companies like, you know, buy through authorized distribution, this is all it is, through that channel. But at the end of the day, consumer market is open to anybody to sell. There could be a lot of that counterfeits and things are happening in the supply chain. Of course, we're making the end product, but with a technology like blockchain that can open up transparency for everybody, that everybody has an advantage. At that point, it's just the person you choose, the relationship you have, and the services that you have, because we can customize the value proposition to the customer instead of just going to one customer, buying from consolidating vendor base, because that's all you know. You guys, everybody wants to reduce vendor base. They have tens of thousands, especially the large guys. How do we consolidate that? If one supplier can give me 20, the other supplier can give me 30, that's good, but I don't want to individualize these. And we know the big top 3, top 5 can supply mostly 50, 60% of the bill of materials, but the other 40%, where does it come from? And they're having a lot of redundancy and challenges because it comes to technology, manpower, the process, a lot of analog, a lot of more paperwork. And that's where a solution providers like even our companies ourselves can come in there and give them a solution to say, hey, this is what we can do. We can consolidate vendors. We have digital interface, just like Sourceability has a digital presence. We can consolidate this for you, ship it to you to any region, because contract manufacturers are everywhere. And especially with now the onshore, offshoring, the allocations of production, they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They're going to produce in Asia, might produce in Mexico, might produce in Europe.
See a lot of business coming back to the US. If you just look at the fabless or the
correct.
So
all the fab,
70 billion, I guess, in Arizona and Texas that we can expect in investments, which I think is pretty exciting because it shows that certain production travels and at a certain point it comes back.
It does.
I've seen that in Europe before I moved to the US, after in '89 the wall fell in Germany and the eastern part opened, a lot of production, especially automotive again, went into Hungary, Romania, then it went to China. Then they said, oh, that probably too far from our development, so they brought it back into Hungary.
Yeah.
And today it's like there's still a lot in Germany, which is probably still one of the most expensive places.
Correct.
But it's obviously there's a kind of an efficiency, that makes also a difference.
Efficiency, consistency, and discipline of how they produce. They're lean. I mean, they're lean, but they also are creative. Yeah. That comes back to play. And that's the question, final couple questions I have for you is, as a leader of Sourceability and building the infrastructure, the ecosystem, bringing on people, but of course, it's also the change management of people's mindsets, of salespeople, of changing the way they act, the way they do, because we know coming from historically in the last 20, 30 years from the supply chain and some of the trading business, independent to franchise, some of those mindsets need to change. So I know so how, I mean, for myself, how do you overcome this? Because this is a challenge.
It is. And let me tell you something. I guess it was with Yashar. It was probably in 2016, 17. We were in Berlin. We had a digital agency that helped us developing the product and said, okay, the thing you have to do in parallel is create this digital culture and digital organization set up in your company.
Correct.
Which at this time, I have to be honest, I really thought, okay, that might have some time. I can do that down the road. Yeah. We had no product, so it was all on paperwork. We started developing. We gave it Turbine Kreuzberg was one of the developers of the platform together with Spryker as a platform. So we go into end of 17 and we're like, okay, so we start seeing a product. So I think the most interesting part is, okay, we prepare our salespeople to introduce that when it's ready to our existing customers that we developed, and we were growing fast. It was fascinating. They say, okay, we have some delays. Let's take Electronica. And Electronica was the best platform. I think we had a great entry. We got so much good responses, and people were like, oh, is it really happening? So one of the guys, the founder of iSupply, Lloyd Kaplan, came to our booth, and we showed him the system and said, is that true? Can I transact? And look, he started iSupply and sold it, and he said, oh, wow. Yeah. So, and we were on our booth, and okay, I kicked it off. And everyone was excited. My salespeople, everyone said, oh, by the way, we have Source Engine. Nobody has Source Engine. Nobody, even a small company like us, ever thought about developing something like Source Engine. So they were really excited. So we go over in 18, we were in a shortage. We were in an MLCC shortage. Yeah. So people really say, okay, do I spend an hour, 2 hours myself on Source Engine every day, or I try to fulfill orders? Yeah. So this is when, and we talked about it on the way here, say where you feel kind of a resistance for someone who is in the industry 5-10 years now to use new tools, even if it's your own tool. So, and I talked about it last year. I went on a trip. I visited every office in the world except China was closed already, and India. I had some issues with my visa. I applied too late. But I visited all our offices and kicked off this digital transformation because it took me 2 years also to convince everyone in. And I think this is an ongoing process. What we see now, what we really see is that first time we see benefits of our establishment, internal establishment, by using the tool, getting quotes out. Now inventory say, okay, instead of sending out an offer by email, you just send a link and the offer is in Source Engine and you click and it's executed, and they say, oh, can I send the order by paper? No, just push the click the link. Yeah. So this is stuff that it will be there, and I think it will be there for a while. But I have to admit that the opportunity of digitalization and maybe a quick shout out to Steve Flagg and all the framers out there. I think people, even in Sourceability, were really excited to see what happened this week with a company like Supply Frame teaming up with Siemens and creating that valuation over the years. I think that's amazing, and this is something where you really feel, okay, if you really go this way, there's always a risk, at the end of the day, there will be a reward, and I think they deserve it. I think we learned a lot. We do a lot of things different. We are more on the transactional side, but I think that is something that even I can use for my people and say, look, this is where we go.
Well, it creates value.
It does.
There is value. It
Absolutely.
solidifies value.
Yeah.
And that's what people think. And that value comes with everything that you hard work you're putting into. It's like, wow, that just happened. Imagine what could happen in the future. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And that digitalization, I agree with you, is the change of mindset, a process of the people. Just to say you became a salesman of digitalization. I think I've been a salesman for the last 3 years of digitalization, still getting the people to understand of data.
You're in the
is
midst
king.
of it, right?
You're in the midst of all this, of putting information, it's garbage in, it's garbage out.
Yeah.
If you don't put the information in the system, you're not going to get because the company as in general can make strategic decisions of what's working and what's not and invest in those areas. At the end of the day, to generate more revenue, everybody wins. And that's the biggest mindset challenge of people is digitalization.
Yeah, and you know, your own employees are in the same group of users, right?
Yes.
You know, when you were talking about value add proposition for the user, you know, solving their problems and they seeing the value and focusing on their experience, right? Your own employees as a company are also part of that. And if you're not able to create that experience, that a smooth experience for them, they're going to resist that, you know, because in the end of the day, you know, they have to be part of it, right? So, you know, those are, again, you know, those are the learnings that, you know, we've done, you know, and have given us a lot of opportunities, you know, to improve and, you know, tag along the team. You know, and I have no doubt, you know, in the next couple of years, we're, you know, a fully digital organization.
You know, I could make a joke about it. I'm like, digitalization, I'm like, we had a tough time making people get in front of a camera during the lockdown. Just put their face on it, turn your camera on. This was, I'm like, you guys all talk, everybody talks, I want to be digital, but you're actually not even presenting yourself. And then people feel like, I look weird on camera. Well, you look the same on camera than you do in person. So, but these are the things that I think as leaders, you totally deal with, you know?
You know, and it's like, I since I'm doing this for a while, I remember the times, you know, you had a fax, then you had the internet, then you had the email. And we always said, you know, if people then, when we had email, people didn't want to do the calls. Yeah. They tried to send email. And we always said if phone would have been invented after the email, if we would have had email first, everyone would have been on the phone. So it is something new. There's a normal resistance that, and I think it's human being. And but we see the upside, and the upside is much bigger. And I look out in our industry, and I see a lot of companies doing business like they did a decade or two decades, and we see also a consolidation. And at the end of the day, I would say, the also more digitalized companies will acquire more of the analog companies because they see the potential in doing so. On the manufacturer side, on the distribution side, we saw a lot happening in the last 20 years. Yeah. So I'm quite optimistic. If we sit together again in 5 years, we'll say, okay, look how we started, what happened. And as I said, the company is 6 years old. So in 5 years, we are 11 years old. It's like this is like still a startup. Yeah, still a startup. And that's what comes to my mind is all the changes, digitalization, but also with digitalization, I think one thing that the pandemic does is rehumanize digitalization. It does. Put a human face on it. Like yourself being in front as a leader, being in front, leading by example is the biggest thing in our industry. I think that it's still not there. I think because the older generation, the leaders, they're not leading by example. They're telling their people to do this. And as a digital company, you have to be present as the leader to show, hey, these are my visions, this is what I'm doing, and selling it not just to your customers, to your employees, that look at me, I'm out there selling our platform, selling these products and solutions, and actually listening to everybody to get that grasp. Because if I'm not in front of them, if I'm not where the people are at, or if I'm not putting myself out there, how can I get that information to make better calculated decisions? Right. So let me give you one example. We talk to a lot of distributors. Most of them are public companies, so they also have a responsibility for their shareholders. Correct. A lot of them invested in technology, acquiring companies, developing technology. And I think it's hard when you're kind of a public company in report to your shareholders to sit there like I say, okay, if you develop technology, you have a lot of failure. Yeah, because it's really costly. R&D. And this is something where I hope that also in our industry, even if I know that a lot of projects did not lead to the success or not lead where they wanted them to be, and money was invested. I don't think it was lost. It was an investment, and you learn from that. I hope that this encouragement is still there, that we have to change. I see some of them. Of course, the shortage right now puts a lot of makeup on that, so we can patch a lot of things because the numbers will be good.
It's a Band-Aid. Yeah, it's a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing the investments during times like this, then you'll pay for it in 3 or 5 or 10 years.
I 100% agree, and I've been telling that to all my global staff. We're doing a lot of internal digitalization process, this contact resource management system, CMS systems, and we're just busy. I'm like, well, I know you're busy, but when you're not busy, and then you're going to say, I don't know what I'm doing with data, what are you going to say to me? And it's like, we have to keep thinking ahead and evolving. We're all busy. We're all moving. I'm like, I have more busier today than I've ever been, but I'm constantly, it's one thing I say, sometimes a lack of intellectual curiosity is there from some people. As a leader, like, there's information like you guys coming on. We all learn from each other, and then it's collaborating. But I think sometimes people are tunnel vision because they see numbers and they forget about everything that the ecosystem that can help them accelerate it.
It's about change, and people really don't like the change if they are not driving it. So
Correct.
That's if people like change if they buy a new house because they are driving it. So if you get moved into a house from someone else, you might not like it.
So my final question for both of you, Frank, and what is, you guys have but what is your future Jens, for yourself? What is your future outlook for the ecosystem of supply chain, and also a message for the new talent and new people out there of coming into this industry and showing what it's all about?
Okay, what I think is the way the regional way we did business, and that's something interesting. When I started in '83 and then in '88, I was more on the side, like I worked for a company called Computer 2000, which was bought by Tech Data. We grew from 100 million to 3 billion in 5 years. And we grew from 100 people. I was employee, I guess, 98, 99, right behind the 100, to end of 92. And I started there in January '88. I guess we had 2,800 people, something like this. And it still was very regional. And then when we started acquiring companies like in Spain, so we traveled. So what I really think is that our industry, from this regional perspective that we are, also rep systems that we have, ERA, that we will have a more global approach, especially from the manufacturer side. So we cannot have, and I go back to Europe, we had pricing, EBV had pricing in Munich for German customers. The German company had a production in Austria, then they would quote different pricing. I think that will go away. And that is part of this digitalization, creating transparency, and becoming global. And I think for young people, really to work on a global level, and in our companies, I don't know how many religions we have, all colors, nationalities.
Diversities,
We have more than 40 nationalities, I guess, in Sourceability. It's amazing, and I love it, and I learn from it. Even if I'm one of the older guys in the company, this is what keeps me. This is what keeps me traveling, and this is for everyone who is interested in that industry that comes from a regional to global level and does the digital transformation. That's an opportunity. And my son is 25, and he works in the financial industry, and he always said, look, I see myself sitting in an office in San Francisco for the next 20 years. And now people are talking to him about fintech tools, how his companies could use that. And he says, oh, Dad, if I look outside what I'm doing right now, there are a lot of opportunities out there, but I learned the basics. So most important for young people, learn the basics, make your homework, and then be curious and open to new stuff.
I love it. The curiosity. Stay curious.
Yes,
Stay
absolutely.
curious. Yashar, what do you got?
I think regardless of which position or which part of the supply chain you're going to be, right? There's always going to be a salesperson. There's always going to be a business developer. There's always going to be a programmer. What is really important is to understand that a world goes through this total transformation. and the you've got to be able to stay in par, with your skills. I think that's really important, and those skills are going to be, digital skills. We totally promote internally in Sourceability for our salespeople to use, the social media like LinkedIn, and not just podcast, but also do lead generation, and this is the typical example, right? Your podcast program, being part of that digital sales, that development. So I think it's all gonna come down to continuing to stay updated, because whatever that we learn today is going to be obsolete tomorrow. And whether you're a technologist, you're a software developer, you're in the sales, you're in procurement, you're in, logistics. I can tell you, I came across a week or two ago a brilliant software tool for counterfeit detection, for instance, right? All of these things. It's just the world is moving all the time, and being able to stay updated with all of those, regardless of your age, whether you're a newcomer or you're here, in order to stay in par and move forward. I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the new generation, new kids coming up, for me, it's a big thing for me is also giving back, is giving back to a lot of the generation, and also inspiring people that this is a fun, because again, bringing the sexy back to the supply chain industry, because for the last 10 years, it hasn't been, because software's taken over. And you guys are software as well, but yours the hardware. You're selling hardware, but that's coming. It's exciting.
That's the vehicle.
Yeah, and it's the vehicle of it, but it's bringing that back, and we're bringing that talent and giving back and showing, because a lot of the science, the STEM programs out there, especially say Orange County, this is a lot of area that we need to sustain that, because Silicon Valley is known for all that, but it's bringing that back to the hardware, and as innovation, as everything's connected. These tools are going to be much more, as I said, they're going to be much more advanced, and we need more engineers and we need more people that are self-grown in the States or in the countries to be able to sustain this and to be competitive. So I really thank you guys for coming on. This has been an honor. Thank you. It's been an honor meeting you in person, Jens and Yashar. It's been great, and I would love to do this again in the future. You see what things change. I learned so much from you guys, and it's just sharing that knowledge and information. I think that's why I created this whole platform. We need to share more in industry. We need to share, because we're all going to win together. Exactly. There's no more competition is there. But it's just we win together. Yes. So if we can't unite, it will kind of be that industry that doesn't grow so fast and still be kind of the ancient age of digitalization, be very slow. So, true. But as I said, thank you guys again, and I can't wait to see you, and I wait to best success for this year. And that sounds like it's doing great.
Yeah, doing good. See you soon.
Very good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Robbie.